Good morning, Freddie. Good morning, Randy. Can either of you hear me?
Good morning, Miss Provost. Finally, I got it unmuted.
Good. I was scared there for a minute. I wasn't hearing anything. I'm not in my usual place, so.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not. I'm out of my comfort zone, so I have to struggle through this. How's everything? You look bright and chipper this morning.
Well, thank you. I've had a nice walk, and here we are.
Good.
Hey, Freddie and Cheryl, can you all hear me?
Yes.
I can. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Capps.
Good morning, sir.
Good to see you.
Did you have a good time in Florida?
Yes, sir. I did. Thank you.
Great.
I'm not in my usual spot, and I'm not sure how good the network is here, but so far so good.
Looks good, Cheryl.
It does. Oh, good.
We're not going out to eat for you.
Yes, we are. Everybody's good.
Great.
Well,
But Dr. Boney, don't
Yes,
you
ma'am.
think I ought to be on that advisory group for the school since I shop so much there?
Freddie, I'm used to you being in the Regents room.
I'm used to being there, but I'm just across the way. I'm not very far away.
I'm kind of liking this remote work.
It takes some adjustment, that's for sure.
It does, but now I'm adjusted and I can go back and forth.
Good.
Yep.
Well, I'm sure you get plenty of opportunity to go back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning, Linda. How are you?
How are you?
Great, thank you. You?
Good, thank you. Hanging in there.
Great news.
Strange times we're in.
It sure is. Every day is a new curveball.
Exactly.
Well, I have 9 o'clock, excuse me, your time. Julia, are we ready to start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'd like to call our October 23rd committee meeting to order. A big welcome to all of our regents and faculty and staff that are joining us today in administration, as well as any guests that may be in attendance. We appreciate your participation in our board meetings. I want to make a special welcome to our new regents, Regent West and Regent Milliken and Regent Edmonds. Congratulations. We look forward to working with you and engaging with you and sharing thoughts and ideas about what's best for our university. I also understand that Dr. Shane Spiller is in the audience today. I want to congratulate him for his recent selection as the next faculty regent. We will, according to their faculty handbook, he takes office November 1. And so we will swear Dr. Spiller in at our December board meeting. In a few minutes, we will recognize our individual new regents in attendance today and conduct a swearing in ceremony. Each of you have received a copy of the new committee assignments. The main purpose, or the only purpose of that revision, was to place our new regents on a respective committee. And if you have any questions or concerns, let me know or somebody know, and we'll address those. Obviously, these committee assignments run through June 30th, 21. And then the next chair will establish future assignments. So if a regent has aspirations for another committee, whatnot, make those things known to your fellow regents. With that being said, Julia, are you distributing or have we received the 2021 meeting schedule?
Yes, it's been distributed at their places.
Okay. Ask everyone to put that on your calendar so that we can continue to maintain full participation in our board meetings. Next, we normally do not have a roll call at committee meetings, but we are going to do that today in order to, we felt that it would be preferred, since we are swearing in new regents, that we put up a little more formality in this particular committee meeting especially. So with that, Secretary David Brinkley, would you please call the roll?
Regent Bale. Present. Regent Ball.
Present.
Secretary Brinkley is present. Regent Edmonds. Present. Regent Ernst. Present. Chair Higdon.
Present.
Regent Henson.
Present.
Vice Chair McKinney. Present. Regent Milliken. Here. Regent Nichols.
Present.
Regent West. Mr. Chair, we have 10 regents present, representing a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We have a quorum and can conduct business. The next item on our agenda is a recognition. Call upon President Caboni to start that process.
Regent Higdon, thank you so much. Today is a bittersweet day. We get to say goodbye to some close friends, but also to celebrate the work that they've done on behalf of Western Kentucky University. I want to take a moment to pause and express my appreciation to Regent Ernst for his work, for his collaboration, for his guidance, and for his good counsel for the past 3 years. It feels like a day, and it feels like a decade since my first semester here on the Hill. And one of the constants has been Klaus's work together with me, with the cabinet, with others across campus, but his individual leadership as well. One of the things that many people don't understand or don't know about shared governance is that the work that happens collaboratively behind the scenes to shape what we do as an institution is sometimes more important than the work that occurs in meetings. And I will share with you, there have been many occasions when Klaus has reached out to help me understand more clearly an issue from the perspective of a faculty, to help do a little course correction on selections. I will remember our strategic planning conversation when I first arrived, making sure that there were no missteps made. And along the way, I've been thankful for Klaus's reliance upon data and not emotion. As a mathematician, you obviously expect that from him. And he has been a wonderful servant to the university, will continue to be a leader on campus as a distinguished professor. But we're just grateful and thankful, Klaus, for your friendship and the work that you've done on behalf of the university as a regent. And I will open it up to any other regents who would like to say something nice about Regent Ernst to thank him for his service.
Well, it's hard to follow those accolades, Mr. President, but it's been a true pleasure, learning experience in working with Regent Klaus. He brought a lot of talent, devotion, heavy lifting to our meetings and to our board engagement. I think his fellowship with each of us was unbelievable and led the university to a better place. He definitely will be missed, but I hope we can continue to call upon his expertise. And I feel like if he's got some comments for us, that he won't be shy in passing those along. So thank you, Klaus, for your outstanding service to the university as a regent, and more importantly, your outstanding service to the university as a distinguished professor.
I certainly would like to add a few comments too. Klaus has always been on time. He's done his work, his homework. He's been thoughtful on many issues that we've dealt with these last 3 years, which have been jam-packed full of activities, strategies. He has exemplified many great characteristics, and fortunately, he and I often agreed on most things. I can't think of many things we didn't agree on, but he has kept the university's best interest at heart throughout all of that. So I will miss him personally, and we will miss him on this Board of Regents. And he also has a spouse who has been a credit to both him and our university. So we'll miss seeing you as much, but you're not going away, and we will see you on campus.
I'd like to make a couple of comments as well. First, let me endorse everything that's been said. I have enjoyed Klaus being a seatmate. Often he and I sitting there commiserating over various issues. But the thing that I wanted to say is, I've met a lot of smart people in my time. I put Klaus in that category. Really, really a brilliant individual. And I don't think you could ask for someone who's been more dedicated, committed, and working hard to be the representative for the constituent of which he was to serve. Not just from a faculty perspective, but from students and for the university. And Klaus and I had a lot of conversations privately, asking questions. And I always think that the really smart people know so much, but I appreciate really smart people who say, I don't understand this part, and they're reaching out to the people that can actually help them understand it. I don't know that I was ever able to help him understand a lot, but the fact is he reached out to do that. And that just shows the level of commitment that he's had in the role as a regent and for the whole university. So I want to thank him for his service and look forward to seeing him still as we get around on campus.
Can I jump in next? Some of you all in this room know that Klaus and I haven't always agreed, but we have been able and willing to work together and learn from each other. And some of the best discussions I've had around the best interest of the university, and that's the key thing here, is we have to put our constituencies aside, because the elected regents are brought in by certain constituencies, but we represent by statute and by requirement and by bylaws the best interest of the university, not necessarily the staff, the faculty, or the students in that order. Klaus has helped me understand that. He's helped me work through complex issues. And sometimes when we walk into a room and we aren't necessarily walking into an atmosphere where we think we're going to be the best conversation in the room, because we have to get information out. We have to get questions answered that are very concerning to us. It's good to have a partner in those meetings. And Klaus has been a good partner. We've been able to bounce questions back and forth in many instances in meetings across campus, come to some similar conclusions and different conclusions, but all of them have been in the best interest of moving the university forward. I can't say enough, though, about an ongoing thing that he will be participating in, and that's he is a member of the benefits committee, and of all the service that will continue by him. Forget the faculty piece where he's a valuable member of the faculty of mathematics. His work on the benefits committee is some of the most important work that any individual does on this campus. And I'm happy that that will continue regardless of his board service.
Thank you all. I'm deeply honored by all these accolades.
Could I jump in and just say thank you, Klaus? It's been a pleasure to serve with you and an honor. I wish you well.
Thank you. It has been an honor to be on this board. I would like to continue. You guys know that, but the vote is the vote, and I have to accept that. Life goes on. So thank you.
There's no compensation for serving as a regent other than the honor of getting to represent your constituency and guiding the institution. But we do have a small token of appreciation for the hundreds of hours of work it takes to prepare for these meetings. And Klaus, as Regent Bale said, you are among the most prepared regents over the past 3 years, and the level of commitment to reading every line of every document I think is to be commended and is appreciated. So thank you for your work. Congratulations on a wonderful term, and we'll see you at coffee or tea.
Yeah. You have seen this every meeting.
The other, we have one more special recognition today, and I want to recognize Regent Will Harris, who has served as the Student Government Association President and Student Regent for what I believe is the longest single term presidency in the history of the Student Government Association. Will was elected in the spring of 2019 and served as president of the Student Government Association due to COVID-19 until just the past couple of weeks. And Will has been a rock solid leader for the student body, but has been also a great contributor to the Regents. I want to make particular mention of his commitment to ensuring as an institution we navigated what may have been some of the most difficult waters in the history of WKU. When the decision to go remote was made in March, and the task force began its arduous work, along with the work of faculty and staff, to come back in person in August, Will was a daily representative on those 8 a.m. calls. And those daily calls lasted, it felt like years. I think it was several months until we pulled the schedule back. And he was always the guiding force behind keeping at the center of our decision our mission to serve students and to make sure that whatever decisions we were making as an institution kept them in mind. And so, Will, I appreciate your leadership as a Student Government Association President, your good friendship and colleagueship. And we really look forward, this is the most fun part, we look forward to seeing all that you accomplish in your professional career. Thank you for your work, your service. And you're not going away yet. We have a commencement to celebrate in person in May. So congratulations, Will. Thank you.
Will, likewise, you have been an outstanding representative of student body, and your service has been exemplary, engaging, a true shared governance partnership arrangement. I, like the president, can't wait to follow your career. We better have a jetpack with us because it's going to be fast and high, I know. But thank you for your service. And again, don't hesitate to stay in touch, offer suggestions, comments, and we look forward to seeing your future successes.
Here, here. I've been on the board long enough that I've seen quite a number of student regents, and Will has to be right up there at the top. He's been a pleasure to serve with.
I'll just say, Will, thank you for your mentorship this last year, serving as your vice president. I've got to serve as vice president for 2 student body presidents and 2 regents. For those of you that don't know, Will is my best friend, has been for some time now. And it's an honor to get to follow in your footsteps. And I do hope to continue to have your mentorship in this role. But you're going to do great things. I'll see you later when we go back home. But yeah, thank you. And again, there is no monetary reward for serving as a regent or a student body president, but we have a small token of our appreciation, Will, for you and the work that you've done. And I'm still working to see if we can get access to the bell tower in Cherry Hall for that photograph you want to have made. So we're going to get that done at some point between now and May. I got to find the key. Thank you.
Thank you.
You like to say something?
Yeah, I'd just like to say the past, year and 5 months, or quite possibly the longest year and 5 months of my life, but by far the most enjoyable. It was a pleasure to serve on the board with each of you all and all the different roles, and getting to watch and learn from each and every single one of you. I truly enjoyed my time here, and it's going to be difficult to move on, but I'm still here. I'm still here for a little bit longer until May, until we have that in-person commencement, and that's on record. And then also, Garrett is fulfilling my role. I just wanted you all to know to take it easy on him. He is my best friend. We do live in the same house as each other, so I will be there for backup anytime he calls on me. So, I'm there anytime you all need me, and anytime I need to come back, I'm always more than willing to come back. And it's going to be hard to move on, but I'm excited for retirement. So thank you all very much.
Mr. President, does that conclude our special recognition?
That does conclude our special recognition.
Again, to Regent Ernst and Regent Harris, thank you for your dedication and commitment to the university. We next move on the agenda to the oath of office. Will our new regents follow the direction of Julia, and we will commence the swearing in process. Again, good morning. Welcome. I ask that you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, so long as you continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully execute to the best of your ability the office of member of the Board of Regents of Western Kentucky University according to law? And do you further solemnly swear that since the adoption of the present Constitution, you, being a citizen of the state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within the state, nor out of it, nor have you sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have you acted as a second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending. So help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, Regent West, Regent Milliken,
Thank you.
and Regent Edmonds.
Thank you.
At this time, Julia will distribute to you a pin symbolizing your service as a regent to the university. It represents a long-standing heritage adopted in the past that the regents would have a special pin to signify their service to the board, their fiduciary responsibility to this university, and to, in a way, recognize the honor and privilege of your service to our great institution. At this time, a round of applause to welcome our new regents. Mr. President, do you have anything to add?
Regents are the lifeblood of leadership and shared governance at this university. And one of the great privileges of service is the learning that comes along with it. So for each of you, I hope you find your time and your service as educational as those who preceded you. You're caretakers of a wonderful university. And our job as stewards of WKU is to leave the university in a better place than we found it. And so I look forward to working hand in glove with you during your terms as regents to help advance the course of this institution. And I look forward to getting to know you personally and our fond relationships that we get to form with one another. So congratulations to each of you.
Any other regent have a comment to add? You should know that over the upcoming weeks, our new regents will participate in orientation and training. Some of it mandatory and some of it will be generated internally by the university. Also want to let the other regents know that we are still on task to formulate a training session for all of the regents. Hopefully we can get that accomplished. We're thinking maybe January is a more probable timeline, but I did want you to know that that is still on our task list, and that will facilitate our continuing education as regents of the university. With that being said, again, congratulations to our new regents. We look forward to working with you. All of us want to be a resource for you. Reach out to any one of us with questions or comments, and we'll get you running on the ground running in no time. Thank you very much. Again, congratulations. At this time, I think we're ready to get to the committee agenda. And the first committee is Academic Affairs, chaired by Regent Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a comment for our new board members, we're a small board, and as they will no doubt soon realize, we're a working board. And because we don't have that many numbers, everyone ends up playing a pretty important role. So on the Academic Affairs Committee, welcome Mr. Milliken today, and Shane will soon be replacing Klaus, and I look forward to having both of you on the Academic Committee. I think the role of our committees is evolving almost as we speak. We have Provost Stevens with us via Zoom, and one of the things that I will mention concerns our certificate programs, and we have talked about having a session to explain how that process is being done. Provost Stevens has been working with her people in putting together some things, and they're not quite ready, but particularly since we have two new committee members, it makes sense to sometime in the next few weeks or months possibly have a special call meeting of the academic committee to discuss this process. We have recently had a number of programs we've been asked to approve. We have two more on the agenda for today. And with our new CAPE process regarding curriculum and how that's handled, I think we can anticipate more of this sort of thing over the next few years. With that, I will go to action item 1. And Provost Stevens, I think we have someone here to perhaps present to us these, do we?
Correct. Sarah McCaslin from Professional Studies is going to present briefly the proposal for this undergraduate certificate. Sarah?
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Thank you all for your time today. I appreciate it. This is a interdisciplinary professionalism and success certificate. It is designed specifically for the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences students. It is a product of a initiative led by our Student Success and Leadership Committee within our college, under the guidance and support of Dr. Murphy. We have devised a couple of student success initiatives for our college. One of those being the Student Success Academy. We look at that as a 4-year process, beginning with our first-year students through their entire student life cycle, engaging not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom to prepare themselves for graduation and just retention, success. All of that is rooted within the high impact practices that are established through the American Association of Colleges and Universities. That's our framework for what we're doing here. And specifically, out of all of that, we decided to look at a curricular credential for our students. And what we've devised here is this interdisciplinary professionalism and success certificate. Now, the students that participate in the Student Success Academy have the option of adding this certificate to their amazing programs that they choose within the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences: psychology, teacher ed, organizational leadership, military studies. And this particular certificate, it fosters retention. It goes very, very well with our Colonnade program, our general education program. And the students that participate in this certificate will gain an added layer of professionalism, workforce readiness as they transition out of the undergraduate situation into the workforce, or as they choose to go into graduate studies to pursue graduate degrees. The coursework within this certificate is embedded in a student's chosen program within the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences. We have been very mindful of students' time, their finances, as well as their already committed time to their actual programs. And again, this certificate, as it is embedded into their programs, they will complete a capstone course within the certificate that lets them pull all of their learning, all of their experiences as a student together and become that emerging professional from our College of Education and Behavioral Sciences. And we feel like that this certificate will place them at a higher level. It will help them culminate all of their learning and their time here at WKU as they transition out into that workforce. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
I think I just heard you say that this program could be integrated into their 4-year program without additional cost to the student.
That is true, yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
I have a couple comments, questions. So I will not oppose this, just to say that up front, but I'm puzzled by the need for such a program. So if I have this finally in front of me, and if I read of it, So upon completion of the program, students will communicate functional knowledge. My opinion would be that any undergraduate major we have at this university ought to enable the student to do this. Demonstrate evidence of writing, collaborative projects, research in the academic field. Again, I would say that any major worthwhile salt ought to do this. Exemplify commitment to cultural sensitivity. Same thing, if you are in the College of Education and you don't have that, I mean, what are you doing there? And so I'm sort of puzzled by whether this is a positive thing or a negative thing, in the sense that suppose you do not have this, okay, this certificate. Are we saying that these other students are not prepared? This is not a message I think we want to send, okay? Now I have looked at the courses which are there. There's just a whole bunch of courses, so I see no problem that students get this extra certificate. But whether this is worth anything, that is the question I just can't quite wrap my head around. So can you convince me that this is really something which is worthwhile for students to do?
And Dean Murphy, feel free to weigh in on this discussion.
Absolutely.
I feel the worth of this certificate comes in at the end of the student's program. Yes, they are exposed to global learning. Yes, they are exposed to foundational knowledge in their 100 and 200 level classes. And yes, they are exposed to their research and their writing throughout their programs. This is apparent, this is obvious. However, again, I feel the worth of this program comes in at the end of a student's life cycle here at WKU. They may engage in these particular practices, in this information. They may have completed and checked the boxes for their general education and all of that. But what we're trying to do here is, at the end of this particular program, this certificate, have a student look at what they've accomplished and be able to articulate those accomplishments as they transition into the workforce, as they transition into graduate school. And that's one of the reasons why we do have the culminating course there at the very end that will provide students an outlet, an opportunity to put together perhaps a portfolio that highlights their experiences here as a WKU student. And we feel like that if a student can go into a job interview or a graduate school interview and be able to articulate all of that foundational knowledge, their participation in research and writing and global learning and in all of these wonderful things that they've done, then these students are going to rise above their competitors, basically. We feel like this will give our students a place, a prominent place when decisions are being made about employment, graduate school, that kind of thing. There is a bit of a precedent here on WKU's campus for a certificate such as this. In 2014, the Gordon Ford College of Business created a certificate very similar to this. And this was some inspiration as we were developing what we wanted to do within the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences. So, I had conversations with Dr. Evelyn Thresher. She actually was pretty excited that another college on campus was, pursuing this particular
Zoom call.
students.
And I'll just add, just briefly, this is a first opportunity for us as a university to have a certificate that actually ties together high impact practices that live within a college. So American Association of State Colleges and Universities has any number of studies showing the impacts of research as an engaged experience at the undergraduate level, as quality advising, professionalism within the degree program itself. And what this certificate does is it allows all of the departments within the College of Education to partner together around the idea of what does it mean to be a graduate of our college. And then it provides that level of academic consideration to our students through an experiential process. And so it is about tying together. And Klaus, absolutely, I agree with you. Every degree program worth its salt is going to have many of these similar outcomes, but this is not serving to solve a deficit problem. This is serving to enhance opportunities for our students within our college and for our faculty to be able to work together around a common level of activity that we hope really is highlighted within our college. We have a lot of research, we have a lot of student groups, we have a lot of different kinds of community activities happening. And we want to give students an opportunity to really build those into a program that they can say, this is what this certificate means because it meant partnership with my student peers in different majors. And so there's a lot of opportunities here that we're tying together in an academic credential in a way we have not done so before.
For the benefit of our new Regents too, it's worth noting that by the time these proposals reach us, they have gone through a number of committees, and I don't know if it's worth mentioning how many or which ones, but they do get vetted extensively along the way.
I have one more question. Sarah and Corinne, I thank you for your answers, and as I said, I will not oppose this. The second question is a little bit more general, going also to Provost. So this particular proposal mentions the Gray Associates data, but it's not provided. And we are needing to find a way of doing this in a systematic way. Either it is there or it is not there. But I think to send this on, which with a reference to it, without providing it, is not a good thing to do. And in particular, if I read from this thing, it says that indicates a low association for employment, but this is misleading, which is sort of a statement which says, well, yeah, if the Gray data doesn't support what we're doing, then we say it's misleading. And so I think we need to find a process by which we either have this there or we have not have it there, but sort of it randomly appear is not a good thing. So this is not an issue with this particular proposal, but this is an issue in general. I think we need to find a clear way to move these forward.
Klaus, we are well aware of the issues with program review, and we're working very hard at identifying and being able to articulate how we review programs. Certificates are a little different than bachelor's programs. And, you know, the issue with Gray is that the data are tied to a zip code. And for a certificate program like this, where it's pulling together experiences as it's doing to support students in their culminating year experience, it's not going to be tied to a zip code. And so the Gray data for something like this wouldn't be available, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't bring value, as Corinne and Sarah were able to describe. We are working on a process for review of certificates. We're not quite there yet, but we'll unveil that pretty quick I guess later this fall. And like was discussed earlier, we will probably have a special call meeting to share with the Regents what the process is for these different types of program reviews.
I do have a question real quick. Where is your data coming from for the projection of students in that first enrollment? I was just wondering if that was gauged from student interest or if you had already discussed this idea with certain students within the college. I was just wanting to know where that data was coming from.
We do have students on our success committee for the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences. So we have garnered input from those students. We are projecting that data based on when we roll out our student success initiatives, that Student Success Academy, and when that happens, we are looking at that participation based on the information that goes out to our students at that time. We are definitely working with all of our advisors within the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences to make them knowledgeable about the certificate. And of course, through that organic advising situation, as that happens, when those meetings happen between student and advisor, that is probably where the students are going to say, yes, this is a program I want to participate in. I want to add this to my curriculum at WKU. So we're looking at it from those perspectives.
Good question, Jared. Anyone have any other questions, or thoughts, discussion? Again, for the benefit of our new regents, the committee meetings such as this, the only people that will vote on these items would be people that are on the committee. So if there is no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Regent Ernst, second from Regent Brinkley for approval of the Interdisciplinary Professionalism and Success Undergraduate Certificate. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. And that takes us to action item 2, which concerns a certificate for literacy. And Provost Stevens, do we have someone here who we should? Yes, I see Nancy Hulan is there. Nancy, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. So the Literacy P12 Graduate Certificate consists of 15 hours of advanced level literacy coursework. It was created in response to requests from superintendents and practicing teachers who wanted to enhance their literacy instruction and their skills in the classroom. It's offered completely online, so it would be available to and accessible to teachers throughout the Commonwealth. And we believe will address university and legislative goals of building a more literate community and workforce. Completers receive a WKU credential, have an opportunity to pass the Praxis 2 and receive a reading endorsement on their teaching certificate. And the enhanced credentials make them more valuable in the workforce and make them leaders. We hope, we plan to make them leaders in their school buildings and in their districts.
Good. Questions, comments? Dean Murphy, anything you want to say?
Yes, I'd like to just share some celebration as far as getting the certificate off the ground. We are the first in the Commonwealth to recognize that this is an opportunity for our teachers to grow through a certificate-based program. Prior to this opportunity, you had to enroll in a full master's program. And depending upon where you are in your teaching journey, you may already have your master's. You may in fact have 2 masters or an EDS, and another master's degree is not something that is of interest to you professionally. But tackling this in a 15 credit certificate program allows access to another group of teachers. And with the work of the current Pritchard Committee on Early Numeracy and Literacy, the ongoing conversations at the General Assembly around concerns for our early learners and their inability to achieve basic reading by the time they've reached 3rd grade. This is a timely certificate, and this is a terrific opportunity. And we've shown over the last few years our level of support for teachers within the region, and this is just another example of that. So well done to Dr. Hewlin, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion from Regent Ernst and second from Regent Brinkley for approval of the Literacy P-12 Graduate Certificate. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Our last action item concerns a number of emerita appointments. And Provost Stevens, would you like to tell us about some of these people?
Yes, thank you. Let me just say before I start, we have 7. The way this works is that the faculty, upon retirement, are nominated by the faculty from their departments. This is a vote that happens within the department. Recommendation goes up through the dean and then the provost's office before it comes to you for consideration. So of the 7, we have first Dr. Libby Jones, who was an associate professor of psychology. Dr. Jones served WKU for over 28 years. She was a licensed psychologist in Kentucky and a nationally certified school psychologist. She taught graduate courses in the school psychology and clinical psychology programs and undergraduate courses in the psychology major. She provided leadership in a variety of ways throughout her years at WKU, including program development, course development, coordination of the program, and development of the practica and internship training sequences in collaboration with local school districts. Dr. Tony Norman served WKU, was also a professor of psychology, served WKU for over 13 years. Most recently, he served as Associate Dean for Retention, Persistent and Degree Completion, and Interim Director of the School of Professional Studies in the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences. He recently completed his year as an American Council on Education, ACE Fellow. Other WKU administrative experiences included serving as director of the Educational Leadership Doc Program, interim chair for the Department of Educational Administration, Leadership and Research, and associate dean for accountability and research in the College of Education and Behavioral Sciences. Third is Ms. Becky Tabor, who's an associate professor of nursing and allied health. Ms. Tabor joined WKU in 1985 and retired as an associate professor in 2015 when she entered transitional retirement. Throughout her career, quote, her loyalty and support of Western Kentucky University as well as the WKU program of dental hygiene was unrivaled, end quote. She was well respected, not only at WKU, but throughout Kentucky and beyond. Her service to the American Dental Association Commission on Dental Accreditation, the Council of Interstate Testing Agencies, and the Southern Regional Testing Agency. Ms. Tabor has been a strong advocate of dental hygiene education and the WKU program of dental hygiene. Dr. Afzal Rahim was a university distinguished professor of management. He was first hired into the management department as professor of management in 1983, where he spent the remainder of his career. He became a university distinguished professor in 2005 and served in that capacity until his retirement. He was a Hayes-Watkins Research Fellow and served as a professorial fellow with the University of Wollongong, Australia from 2007 to 2009. He has received several research awards, including 2 at the university level for his work spanning 67 peer-reviewed journal articles, 24 books or editions, and more than 50 book chapters. Dr. Robert Reber is professor of management, joined WKU's management department in 1982. He served for 14 years in various administrative roles, including management department chair, associate dean, and twice as interim dean for the College of Business. Dr. Reber was a major contributor to new course development and the EDD program, and was instrumental in developing a transfer agreement between KCTCS and accredited colleges of business across Kentucky. This later paved the way for the +2 program we now offer for our students. Dr. Dan Jackson, professor in engineering and applied sciences, recently retired after 27 years and was a member of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences faculty and taught in the undergraduate program in manufacturing engineering technology and in both graduate and undergraduate programs in engineering technology management. He is highly esteemed by his colleagues who nominated him for this honor immediately upon his retirement. Dr. Jackson had an impressive career, which included several appointments as a Fulbright Scholar. Last but not least, Dr. Cecile Garman was Professor of Communication. Dr. Garman served as Director of WKU's Learning Assistance Center beginning in 1980 and joined the Department of Communication and Broadcasting in 1984. In the department, she developed a wealth of classes in cutting-edge topics from the undergraduate to graduate level, including among them gender differences in communication, foundations of intercultural communication, cultural impacts on terrorism and communication, multinational business communication. In all, she developed and shepherded 10 courses through the curricular process. Most recently, Dr. Garman held the endowed professor of the Nicely Professor of Leadership in the Gordon Ford College of Business, where she directed the Center for Leadership Excellence. So that's our 7 nominations up for approval.
Thank you. To me, this is one of the most special things we do. Students and faculty are obviously the nuts and bolts of the university, and I think one of the things that has long separated Western from other universities is the personal relationships that our faculty establish with our students. And so the opportunity to recognize length and quality of service, I think, is one of the most fun things we get to do on the academic committee. So thank you for those recommendations and presentations. Anyone have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the Maritime appointments as presented.
So moved.
Motion from Regent Ernst.
Second.
Second from, who got the second?
That'd be Linda.
Linda.
Oh, Linda. Yeah, there you are, Linda. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes and the Maritime. We have an information item concerning a departmental name change, and Provost Stevens, tell us about that.
Yes, this is a request to change the name of the Department of Art to the Department of Art and Design. And Christina Arnold, head of the art department, current art department, is going to tell you about this proposal, this request.
Thanks. And I know, Dr. Price, did you want to start out with a couple words?
No, that's fine, Christina. I have absolute faith that you can summarize this beautifully.
Thanks. Well, thank you all for being here this morning and your time. I wanted to say this is an information item, but it's a proposal to change the name of the Department of Art to the name of the Department of Art and Design. This was a unanimous faculty decision, and it's something we've been talking about in the department for at least 5 years. Essentially, this is really an instance in which the revision of the name reflects the name catching up with our current culture and our curriculum. So this isn't a huge shift in who we are. It's essentially it's a revision of our name to reflect that. Our mission has always been, and what we articulate to our students, is to have them become the artists, designers, scholars, and educators that they want to be. And this shift in terminology more accurately describes and highlights the variety of programs and curricula that we offer. And that's studio art, graphic design, art history, art education, animation, and now game design. As importantly, it allows prospective students to more easily understand the fields of study that we offer. And that's become more and more clear to me. This is now, I'm entering my 3rd year as department head, which means I'm more responsible for recruiting. And when we have TOP advising, when we used to have that in person, I would stand there and they would split the students up into groups, and they said, what students are interested in the Department of Art? And a couple of students would stand up. And then they would say, and that includes graphic design, and like 5 more students would stand up. So we really do need to capture, I think, this name so that we can more clearly articulate to our community even what we do. This name I feel honors, and actually I'm speaking for our faculty here, not for myself. It honors and serves our past, our present, and our future. We've had a graphic design program since the birth of the discipline as it emerged from commercial art in the mid-1980s. So again, this is not a new thing. We've been accredited by the National Association of Schools of Art and Design since the mid-1990s. And this also reflects our current areas of innovation. The last time I was before this board in the spring was to discuss our current and now, thank you, actualized game design program. We also have a growing area of animation, and both of those fall under the rubric of design. So I'm happy to answer or entertain any questions.
Any questions, comments?
I'd just like to add that the Dean's Office wholeheartedly supports this, and as does the entire art faculty who voted unanimously on this. And as you know, faculty unanimity is a pretty rare coin.
Nice. As an information item only, it does not require a vote, and we thank you for the presentation and congratulations on finding anything unanimously in favor. So I'll take a second to also thank Christina. She was a very valuable member of our Academic Restart Committee, which met frequently in the spring and early summer, I guess throughout the summer. And she, as you can tell, is a very well thought out person who had many wise suggestions for the academic restart, which I think has gone quite well. One other information item that is not on here for those of us that have read Dr. Caboni's year report, I noticed on there that we have formed a committee in preparation for the Southern Association of Colleges and Universities for our new regents. Every 10 years, the university has to pass muster to remain a university that is recognized and approved. And so that process has begun, and Provost Stevens, I think, has gotten a committee together, and over the next several years, you're going to hear a lot more about that. And that is a crucial activity that the Academic Affairs Committee should be aware of. With that, Chairman Higdon, I believe that concludes the business of the Academic Affairs Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Bell and members of the Academic Affairs Committee. We next turn to Finance and Budget. Chair McKinney.
We have 3 items on our agenda today. The first of which is acceptance of the annual auditor's report and financial statements for the year ended June 30th. I believe we have Brad on the line that'll have a presentation on this.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning to the Board of Regents. My name is Brad Shelley, and I am a Managing Director at Crow, and happy to be with you virtually this morning to present the results of the audit. I also have with me Max Walton, who is the manager on the engagement and was heavily involved throughout the process.
Excuse me, Brad, I was just going to, before we get to your slides, I was just going to cover a few highlights. So next slide, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, the slides are going to get out of sync if I don't. So next slide, please. So again, just before I turn it over to our auditors, I just wanted to hit some real quick highlights. Another good audit for us. It was a clean audit, unqualified opinion. That's the best you can get. No audit findings is another great result. As far as financially, I think we did well in fiscal year 20. Our cash equivalent increased by 11 million, despite the things that we dealt with the start of the pandemic. Net position increased by 58 million. Now, in full transparency, a lot of that has to do with the pension adjustment that is calculated by the state. But our net position did, in fact, before that adjustment, it did increase by around $4 million. So with that, Brad, again, sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to make those introductory comments. I'll turn it over to Brad and Max to go through the audit findings.
No problem. Thanks, Susan. So if you go ahead to the next slide here. So I wanted to just give the board again a little bit of background on the audit process. I know we go through this annually, but I think it's always important to kind of refresh. And so really the purpose of the audit has a lot of different layers, as you see there in the graphic, whether it's following rules or compliance with regulations, providing transparency on your financial transactions and balances. All of those are critical, and part of the reason why you have the audit performed on an annual basis. As part of that audit, we look at internal controls, we look at your financial reporting, we look at identifying risks and setting materiality. And we also look at the compliance with your federal grant programs, which of course you have many. So all of that is rolled up into the audit process, and that's what we're presenting on today. The financial statements themselves include some various audit highlights, but then also include management's discussion analysis, which gives you a little bit more depth to the conversation, I guess, gives a little bit of background on why the balances changed and allows you to see the comparative information there. And that all rolls up in, and we also provide the management recommendations. So as we'll go through later, any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control, we are required to report in writing. The teaser on that is we did not have any to report this year, so that is good, obviously, and a clean audit from that perspective. Next slide, please. So the background on what does that really include, because there's a lot of different work that we're doing as part of this, and so to just say, we're doing the audit doesn't really give you a full picture of what all is included. So obviously within there is the audit report on the university's financial statements, and everyone's aware of that and used to seeing those. Also includes the single audit or the uniform guidance report. So this is the reports related specific to the federal grants that you receive, and that is also an annual requirement. We also include the SAS 114 letter, which is a required audit communication letter. That just goes through a variety of information on any disagreements or audit adjustments or things of that nature. We also include the House Bill 622 letter and the Kentucky Lease Law Compliance Report. Both of those are required one-page letters from the required by the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And then additional work that we do that isn't completed yet, and this is always completed later, is separate audit reports for the WKYU TV and FM radio financial statements. That work is going to be completed in November, with reporting done likely in December. And similarly, the NCAA agreed upon procedures work, that is also done in November and completed in December. So we'll report on those at a later meeting. Next slide, please. From a financial statement standpoint, the financial statements that we present include obviously the university, but it also includes WKU Research Foundation, which has no activity in the current year, but still does exist. And so it's a blended component unit within there. In the past, we did perform the audit related to that. Since there's no transactions related to it, there's obviously no audit to it, but it is still included theoretically. It also includes 3 discretely presented component units, and the discretely presented component unit is just a fancy way of saying those are included, and you can see those specifically in your financial statements. So those are literally just basically copied and pasted in there. Those are audited by other auditors that we work with to gain an understanding on the procedures they performed, and we rely on those audits. And those are WKU Foundation, the WKU Student Life Foundation, and College Heights Foundation. Next slide, please. And one more. So looking at some of the financial information, I wanted to just summarize this a little bit. So on your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, or essentially your income statement, this gives you just kind of a 3-year snapshot of the high level, your operating revenues, expenses, and then your non-operating revenues and expenses and capital contributions. And so as you look here, you can see kind of in the upper third there, your operating loss is a loss every year. And this is just the way that government accounting standards are required to present the financial information. And as a public university, you're considered your accounting is under government accounting standards. So any kind of funding that is not your tuition or operating types of revenues, that is not included in there. Your state appropriations, your federal grant assistance, state grants, those are all included in the net non-operating revenues and expenses. So don't be alarmed by the operating loss of 79.9 million. There's always going to be an operating loss. That's offset by those non-operating revenues and expenses. So as you get down to the bottom, the change in that position, as Susan mentioned, for this year was 58 million to the positive. But again, to be fully transparent, a large chunk of that is related to pension and OPEB and how that had a positive impact on your bottom line. So as you may recall from past presentations, there are some actuarial valuation calculations that are done to determine what your net pension liability and net OPEB liability are for your involvement in the KERS and KTRS plans. And so that can go up or down each year based on changes in assumptions, based on changes made in the plan, based on contributions made by the Commonwealth of Kentucky. All those have an impact on that net bottom line for you. And for this year, it was a positive benefit for you. So it actually lessened your expense by $55 million. So again, I think it's just important to understand that that is a big chunk of that, as you can see in each of the 3 years, that for the most part is out of the university's control. So in these years where it changes for the positive, that's a good thing, obviously, for the university. But as things change throughout years, that could end up being a negative at some point. It's just good to be aware of that. So as you look at if you pull that piece out, you do end up with about $3.3 million positive change in net position, which again, I think is a very good thing, considering, the pandemic that you had to operate in for the last essentially 3.5 months of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of just the statement of net position or your balance sheet. And again, the thing that you see here is you do see a trend, I would say, of decreasing assets and deferred outflows, which again, some of that is pension and OPEB related, especially in the deferred outflows. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Your total assets for this year actually increased about $4 million, but the deferred outflows of resources actually decreased by about 18 million. So that's why you see the decrease there. Correspondingly, in the liabilities and deferred inflows, you see significant decreases, which is obviously a positive thing. So that has continued to go down. And again, a big chunk of that is related to your net pension and net OPEB liabilities. And then the last set of bar graphs here on the far right is your net position, or essentially your equity. And if you recall several years ago when the GASB's, the government accounting standards, changed and required you to record those net pension and net OPEB liabilities, that pushed you into a negative position overall, knowing full well that you don't have to pay those out, anytime soon. That's a very long-term liability. But it did push most government agencies into a negative position. What you've seen here is a trend of a positive movement, and at the end of the year, you're almost to a break-even standpoint from a net position standpoint with a negative 4.3 million. Next slide, please. So that covers most of the financial results. From a single audit or federal compliance standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, we do testing over those federal grants. There's 2 reports that we issue related to that. The first one is they're in compliance with the government auditing standards. The second one is compliance for each major federal program and internal control over compliance. So that second one is specific to the grants that we test. And there's a process to determine which grants that we test each year, as some of those are rotated by requirements. So the 4 major programs that we tested this year were student financial aid, TRIO cluster, manufacturing extension partnership, and the CARES Act funding that was received through HERF this year. So obviously an additional amount this year. Typically we test 2 to maybe 3 major programs. This year, due to the unique nature of the pandemic and getting the CARES Act funding, that required an additional major program. So we tested that as well. The key thing here is the big check mark. So no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and no reportable findings based on our testing. So a very clean report from that standpoint. Next slide, please. And take one more, there you go. So the last couple of slides here are really just some additional communications I mentioned that'll be communicated in the SAS 114 requirements. Again, no significant changes in anything. There were no significant accounting policies or estimates that were changed during the year, and no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that we reported on. So clean from that standpoint. One more slide. There were also no posted audit adjustments. There were also no waived audit adjustments. So those would be adjustments that we identified that were maybe not material, but above our minimum threshold. And there were none of those either. So very good job by the accounting and finance team in preparing the financial statements and also throughout the year accounting for the transactions properly. Definitely to be commended there. This last couple bullets here under the audit or other communications, there were no significant difficulties encountered. There were no disagreements, no consultations, nothing along those lines. So nothing to report from that standpoint. And again, just a clean audit report. And if you go one more slide, I think that is everything related to this year's financial statements. These 3 items I listed here, just to make the board aware, there are some new accounting statements that'll be coming up soon that'll be effective either next year or the following year. The GASB 84 related to fiduciary activities was one that was actually supposed to be effective for this year. But with the pandemic, the GASB decided to delay all of these implementations and push them all back 1 year. So that'll be implemented next year. GASB 87 around leases is probably the most complex and it'll be the most time consuming for the university. Just gathering all the information on the various leases and contracts and agreements that are out there for the accounting department to really dig into and determine, what kind of impact and if anything needs to be recorded there. And then GASB 89 is an additional one that discusses the accounting for interest costs before the construction period. But that's again implemented in 2 years from now. Next slide. So that's everything that I have. I'll open up to any questions anyone has for me. But again, thank you for taking a few minutes today to allow me to present the audit results.
Thank you, Brad. That's a fantastic audit result. Congratulations to Susan and her team. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
I have a question.
David.
Brad, this is David Brinkley. In another role as the head of public broadcasting, I can't ask this question when we're presenting our audit later this year, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but when GASB, I think it was GASB 68, when that hit, it sent kind of all of us that have these types of audits into a tailspin in the way that we traditionally have relied upon net position as a measurement of financial strength. And I was wondering, from your opinion, if, and there's 2 points to this. Number one, I want you to re-stress that the retirement liability is not a number that the university creates. It's a number that's created for the university, and we have no control over, and can wildly fluctuate to really kind of upset the stability of what had traditionally been a way to look at a net position year to year in comparison. My question is there another measure? Because it's really difficult for the university to say it's been a good year, because what we have to say constantly is, yes, but there's this retirement liability piece. Yes, but these GASB standards have created an issue for the way that we report. Is there a better number to measure strength where we don't have to have a disclaimer?
Well, not one that stands out, directly from the financial statements like maybe net position would have previously. So the couple of things that I typically point people to is, again, that change in net position, but then factoring in the pension and OPEB expense. And so on your financial statements in particular, that pension and OPEB expense is listed on a separate line. So if you were to look at the actual statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net position, you would see under the expenses a positive number, or it's actually showing up as a negative, but it's a positive impact for pension and OPEB expense of $55 million. And so you really have to do a little bit more digging and look at that to see kind of what I was mentioning earlier. We had $58.3 million increase in net position, but 55 of that was out of our control. Now that still leads you to a good year. A $3 million positive change in net position is still a good year. And I think when you look at that, especially on a trend basis, that's why I presented the 3 years. If you're able to look at each year and see kind of that positive trend, that allows you to look, kind of smooth that over, I guess, in case you have a year that's maybe down a little bit or you have some timing issues. As it relates to the net position, again, I think if you're looking at the statement of net position or your balance sheet, it takes a little bit more work, right? So you need to pull out those net pension and OPEB liabilities, which for this year is about $290 million. So again, when you talk about the impact on this, it's pretty significant for most organizations, most universities, and other government agencies out there. It's a pretty significant liability that's out there. And you're right, really the only role that you have in this, or say in this, is just participating in those plans. By participating in KTRS and KERS plans. And but within those plans, WKU has no say over the discount rate that's used, or the contribution requirements, or anything along those lines. That's all dictated by the plans themselves. So those fluctuate up or down depending. Fortunately for most government agencies in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, is we've seen those plans trying to get those plans more funded. And so as those continue to get better funded, that liability goes down, and that has a positive impact on the financial statements for all the different government agencies. But you were right on that. That's something that's really out of the university's control.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Slide 9 does detail the change.
Yeah.
I have a question along very similar lines. So this is the third time I'm seeing this, and it repeatedly leaves me deeply uneasy. Why? Because, well, if I look at this and I look at this net pension liability, it has changed in that 3 years you reported by 140 million. If you throw in this OPEB, it's another 50 million. And then I see a change in that position, which is around 105 million, right? So it's 155 we're gaining by a decrease in this liability, but but our net position only changes by 105. And so I'm not an expert on reading these things, but it always leaves me queasy because I don't really know if we are actually doing good or not, because these huge fluctuations wipe out everything. And so I think it would be very, very helpful, at least to people like me on this board, if there would be I know we're required to do this by law, but if there would be a way to report this where these things can be simply wiped out, and so be comparing apples with apples, I think that would be much more helpful than the report as it is presented.
Yeah, I totally understand. It's not the easiest to read, especially when you're in multiple plans. And really, the thing I would say there, though, is those deferred inflows and deferred outflows also factor into that. So it's not just the net pension and net OPEB liabilities that factor in. If those deferred inflows or deferred outflows fluctuate a lot, which they have, that also has an impact. And so, really going back to slide 6, I think it was, that is what I tried to show there, is pulling that out. I mean, yes, you're required to include it in there. There's no way to pull it out. There's no way to say, we're not going to record this liability. You would not have an unqualified audit opinion if that was the case. So the best that can be done is what we've done, I think, on the financial statements, which is pull that piece of pension and OPEB expense, or in this case, income, I'll call it income or contra expense, out and show it separately on there. And then on the slide here, I try to do the same thing to show, if you pull that out, you're looking at the 3.3 million positive this year, about a 10.9 million positive in FY19, and about a $5.4 million positive in FY18. So when you look at those trends, each year you're in the positives, and, did this year's go down? Yes, but I think that can, be explained fairly easily with the way things went towards the end of the year. And obviously there's other impacts as well, but I think that's really, probably the best way to look at it is to do what you're saying and kind of pull that piece out. But from an audited financial statement standpoint, there's not much we can really do to show it differently. We're required to follow the government accounting standards.
I understand that's what you're trying to do, so I appreciate it.
Yep.
So Brad, Susan, I mean, every other college or university in Kentucky is doing the same thing.
Yes.
Yes.
So any person that would want to evaluate us against anyone else, you'd be looking at apples and apples and making a comparison in terms of how we're managing the university overall.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And I haven't, I don't know what the other universities' net position looks like, but they're all dealing with the same thing. And then all government agencies within the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and really all government agencies and colleges and universities across the country have the same thing. So, yeah, they're all dealing with the same thing. And I have many clients who have a negative net position. And it's, at first when this was implemented 5-6 years ago now, there was a lot of concern over it because it pushed a lot of people into the negatives. And I think to some extent it kind of did maybe what the GASB was intending to do, which was make people aware of, hey, there is this liability out here. You do have a liability. It's not due in the next year or 5 years or even 10 years, but by participating in this plan, you have agreed to provide these benefits, and there is a liability that's going to be paid out over a very extended amount of time. The difficulty in that is because it's so extended and because it's so long-term, there's a lot of assumptions that are built in there. There's a lot of different rates that can impact that. And without getting too much into the weeds, if you look in the footnotes of the financial statements, you can see there's actually a required table in there for both pension and OPEB that shows what a 1% change in the discount rate does to the liability. And it's significant. Like it could be, I'm looking this year at just the KERS plan, and it's a $19 million swing, depending on that 1% discount rate. change. And that's, again, nothing that's in your control.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
David, yeah. I think the only thing I'm trying to really highlight here, Brad, is that it becomes more difficult for the university to accurately, in a snapshot, tell a story of its developing financial picture because of this fluctuation. And while the board will understand it and have the 300 pages to read and digest before we come in here, I think it makes the narrative more difficult for all the universities. And again, this is not a WKU problem. It's because of that continued fluctuation and that wild variance where people will traditionally compare what they will think apples and apples will be, which will be the net position of us versus Chicago College of Business or something in another state. And that is also a challenge that I think we face that creates a difficult narrative position for the administration to be in. I'm not defending that. I'm just saying, I think it adds an extra layer of difficulty that I wish there was a better snapshot way around than having to say, yeah, we're doing better, but there's this pension liability that we're not really responsible for. And that's the added point. So I appreciate the discussion and the time. Excellent points. Thank you for your time on this.
Sure. Just one other comment related, because I think it is a very good point that in terms of trying to explain it, but anybody that's working at a factory, working for a company, working for a nonprofit organization has the same issue. You know, we're trying to figure out, you have a liability if you've agreed to provide retirement benefits. And so it is difficult to explain, but it's not uncommon even when you move out. You know, maybe the way we calculate it for a public university may differ in how we do it somewhere else, but the liability itself of pension, everybody is having to deal with it. And I think I'm not an accountant, so I don't want to imply this, but when I think about what the accounting board was thinking through is trying to make sure that people do recognize it, that here's what I look like today, but as an organization that has people that I'm saying I'm going to provide some financial benefit for you in the future, that people recognize that is a real liability. It's not just something that we're doing from an accounting, it's real. And so I think that from a larger perspective, in terms of how you look at any organization's financials, it's really trying to make sure that's recognized, even for the average person, even for the average employee, to understand that actually does exist. And it's part of the overall financial picture of an organization.
Yep, agreed.
Any other comments or questions?
I just like Regent McKinney to just remind folks that we went through a transition in leadership starting on July 1 of the past year, including turnover among folks who are leading accounting and financial work within that division. And I just want to thank Susan Howarth and her entire staff for producing a clean audit report with no issues in a time when they were also learning how to do their jobs from scratch. I think it's a terrific accomplishment. And I know the effort that went into that. And so I just want to say thank you for the work you've done.
Yes, and I would just second that. I really appreciate the entire team's assistance throughout the audit process. You know, this year was obviously a different process for us as well. We did a lot more of the work remotely, just trying to stay off of campus as much as possible, while still perform the audit requirements and audit testing we needed to. And the team was very helpful throughout, including the student financial aid team, providing all the information and limiting our amount of time on campus looking at documents.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve FB1.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, George. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? FB1 passes unanimously. We have two more items on our agenda, and then we'll take a short break before the information items. FB2 is the next acceptance of the 2021 Statement of Revenue and Expenditures. Susan, do you have a presentation on that?
Yeah, waiting here for the slides to come up. So there we go. So next slide. First, let me say, I think the university has done an incredible job towards making progress towards our, for those of you who remember, our $27 million savings goal that we have in this budget. So I think these highlights will show the board the great progress that we're doing under the leadership of our president and provost. So tuition and fees, this is really great news. We're at 53% of our annual budget and tracking higher than prior year first quarter. So what's really important about this is to note that our fall semester tuition, actual tuition is $5.1 million over the fall semester budget. So that's excellent news. And just remember that what led to that positive result were the 400 additional freshman students that we were able to land. That offset some of the decline that we were seeing in the smaller classes moving through the pipeline. So our state appropriation for the first quarter is 33% of the annual budget. That's slightly higher than prior year, and that is directly related to the fact that we built in a 10% reduction in appropriation that we will most likely realize mid-year. So this is probably a timing that we're slightly over last year and we'll catch up. Grants and contracts are up from prior year primarily due to the CARES funding associated with the pandemic. So next slide, just to hit the highlight on the expenditures. We're about 29.5% of the total budget on expenditures. And I've highlighted slightly, that's slightly higher than prior year, but most of that is directly related to the increase in financial aid spend with our new scholarship program. This is more of a timing issue that will be, that will catch up during the year. The great news, if you just look at actual spending over prior year, we're actually down by 5.6 million. Okay, next slide. So this is related and perhaps unrelated to the first quarter statement, but I just wanted to show you some graphics of how we're looking as far as our operational spend. That would be procurement and any type of purchase orders. So our current spend is 16.8 million as compared to last year of 21.2 million. If you look over on payroll, last year we were at 33.3 million. This year we're at 29.9 million. So I think in summary, what I can say is we're tracking nicely towards meeting that $27 million goal. So I like to remain cautiously optimistic because we have to see what happens with our spring enrollments and what happens with our state appropriation. But at this point, there's no indicators that our spring enrollment would be down. So that's all I have, Regent McKinney, on the first quarter statement.
Thank you very much. Do we have a confirmed amount from the state of what the budget reduction is? Still not confirmed. Okay.
No, it's not. We typically, well, it's not typically. What will happen is that the consensus forecasting group will come back into session in November to evaluate the revenue to the state. It's at that point, if the revenue is coming in, I believe it's 5% below what the budget was built on, the governor is mandated by law to take action at that point. So typically we will learn how much of a mid-year budget reduction we will or will not get. Usually, if the timing is always incredible, it's usually just as you leave for holiday break. And then they will want you to respond as soon as you get back to campus. So that's kind of the time frame, Regent McKinney, we're looking at.
Thank you.
Again, for the benefit of the new regents, we should be jumping up and down in excitement over these numbers, and they didn't just happen. They're the direct result of the initiatives over the last several years to improve not only enrollment, but retention, and to raise enrollment in the freshman class by that number in the middle of a pandemic is phenomenal. And so congratulations to not just President Caboni, but everybody who put these plans in place. And we have every reason to believe that those strategies will continue to work going forward and really place Western in a uniquely good position compared to many other universities. We also need to remember the demographics. You know, college students weren't born coming up, and I think they drop off in 2 or 3 years. So that makes these initiatives and improvements that much more important. And really, I'm inspired by the fact that we've done this well.
Two quick things. The state, Susan, I just want to reconfirm the state numbers fluctuate that wildly because it's a quarterly payment, not like a monthly payment, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The second thing is, along with what Philip said, just remind the board that this is also due in a decent part, if not a large part, by the ongoing sacrifice of the staff and faculty that have agreed to salary reductions that have been imposed by this board and continue to make those sacrifices for the benefit of the greater good of the university in this challenging time period. The stress that I would hope those are reversed when the financial position finds itself in improving levels.
Good point.
One of the things you mentioned, we don't know what the spring tuition will be. And for that, retention is the key. And so one of the questions I had, in the 5th week, we do an assessment, and basically every student, every faculty member has to report which are the students which are doing well and which are passing and failing. And so I'm really wondering, since we're teaching so many classes in a remote setting, do we know if there's any statistical difference between the failure rates that were reported this fall compared to, for example, prior fall?
I can actually answer that question. I'm pulling up a request that I had from Ethan Logan, our new Vice President for Enrollment and Student Experience. Pardon me for my spectacles. So you will know that we have certainly more students in fall 2020 than fall 19. And there was a minuscule tick up in total students reported for the 5th year number from 9976 to 9993. So what that suggests is that we are not having an overwhelming additional reporting of students year over year. There is a bit of a tick up in failing grades. There's a tick down in excessive absences, partially, I'm sure, due to the fact that people can participate via Zoom. Where I'm most pleased is that the number of students who have 1 mark, that means a faculty member is concerned enough to give that student a mark. The numbers are down from 1267 to 1067. A slight tick up from 776 to 855 for 2 to 4 marks. But remember, we also have increased enrollment. So those are all positive. And then the total with 1 or more marks has gone down from 2176 to 2090. So I know that there was a rumor about spring enrollment, and all the indicators that we have is that we are on track to do even better with persistence from fall to spring this year. Now, it's the pandemic year, who knows what occurs, but we have a lot of folks working really hard to make sure that we get folks from fall to spring, and those numbers bear that out.
Yeah, that's very encouraging. Thank you.
Our budget has taken a big hit over the last few years with international student decline for various reasons, most recently the pandemic. But are we getting near the end of that pipeline being diminished?
Regent Bale, I appreciate the question. We have endured the pain gradually, unlike many of our sister institutions who this year, because international students could not get over the transom, took a significant hit. as those, particularly from the contractual agreements we had with Saudi Arabia, as those students work their way out of the pipeline, we have about another 2 years to go, but the decline will be smoother and much more gradual. And we'll hit a baseline, at which point we have to have sustainable growth or stability, at least in those populations. But yeah, we've managed to offset a decline in international student revenue by focusing on our core mission of students within 100 miles.
Questions, anybody else? Okay, hearing no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to accept FP2.
So moved.
Thank you, David. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, George. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries unanimously. We have, next on our agenda is FP3, approval of the personnel action. That is several pages in your packet. Does anybody have any questions or comments about these items? Susan, do you have a presentation on this?
No, I don't.
Okay.
These are just the standard first quarter personnel actions and additional pay. So nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay. All right. Hearing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve FP3.
So moved.
Thank you, George.
Second.
Thank you, David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. With that, I think we'll take a short break. 10 minutes, Julie? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Get back at 5.
Mics are hot.
We ready to go? So we're, I think we're back.
So, you know,
Libby is telling me I spent more than 5 minutes.
I'm giving away.
Next item on our agenda is informational items about the truest bank line of credit. Susan, would you like to discuss that?
Yeah, sure. So not so important for this item, but Jeff, if you could pull up the slide deck, because the next information item will need those slides up for sure. So anyway, I don't want to waste any time. So let me just go over this. So a lot of folks were asking me, why do we need a line of credit if our cash position is good, which our cash position is actually, next slide, please. Our cash position is actually very good. We have approximately about 115 days of cash on hand, which according to Moody's, our credit rating agency, that's excellent. So, so why did we get one? It's just best practice, plain and simple. It's only a safety net. It's always best that you have one in place before you need one. And this will be an unsecured line of credit, $10 million with a variable interest rate with a floor of 2.25. Should we need, which I don't anticipate, to use any portion of that, it must be paid off by June 30th of any given year. So again, this is just best practice, something most institutions have in place in case it's needed. But no, there's no alarm. There's nothing to be worried about. This was one of the things I had on my checkoff list when I started at WKU. So that's all I have, Jason.
Susan, a question.
Okay.
Is there any cost to us for establishing the line of credit?
No. Only if we use it.
I'd like to say this is a piece of advice I give all of my small business clients to have, even if they don't need it. It's just smart to have it there in case short-term cash flow.
Yeah, and yeah.
And Susan's right. Susan's always better to have it before you need it. It's always have like a little safety net, and we've done that as well with the company. Don't really need it, but have it, and we got it when we didn't need it. And it was really hard for me to explain to our board members why it was necessary. It was just a rainy day, just something to have in case.
And when you need it, it's hard to get.
That's right. Exactly. Then yes.
Okay, David.
Just had one comment I wanted to add on that. I had this discussion and I was looking at the terms of the 10 million and I was thinking in terms of the full 364 days. I wasn't thinking about the potential for overnight need and transactional need in an emergent situation. Susan explained that at great length to me. I totally understand it as a best practice now. Like she said earlier, I was confused because of the cash position of the university and that it was very strong. And just while I've got the floor, thank you. I want to thank Susan and Rebecca Russell and Christy Smith. They spent a lot of time with class and I this week. And some of the topics we discussed with them were this line of credit, net position, personnel actions, questions around GASB and the audit, Student Life Foundation, CARES Act reimbursement, spring tuition, retention. All of those items were discussed prior to this meeting so we wouldn't clog a lot of the lines during this session. I appreciate that from all three of them. They gave a lot of time in a very busy week to us.
Thank you, Dave.
I can second that. I always have appreciated Susan. She's very forthcoming with any information I've asked.
Very good. Any other?
Can I comment on that? That's in the forthcoming nature of Susan is intentional. I've said to every regent, including the representative regents, if you have questions, we want to answer them and help you understand more fully why. And that means that we can have those conversations in advance of the full board meeting, because some of them are, to be candid, drilling down into the weeds in a way that is important for individual understanding, but not necessarily a worthwhile use of everyone's time. And so
Okay, does anybody have any further discussion? Thank you, Susan. That takes us to our next informational item, the WKU Incident Response Plan.
Yeah, so I wouldn't even try to explain or try to begin to explain all this. So we have our AVP for Information Technology Services, Greg Hackbarth, and to go through this exercise. This is something that the board had requested that we do. I guess Greg is well over a year ago. So we've completed the exercise and Greg is here to help lead us through it. I know that he may have some of his staff if needed to talk through some questions. So Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So as Susan mentioned, about a year ago, some of you may remember that Regent Higdon suggested during board discussion that we test our incident response plan as a part of our security program. And he talked about the value of outside help with that. So we definitely took that suggestion. And then late last year, we talked to several firms and found that Crow LLP held a state contract that we could leverage for these services. So as you saw from the earlier presentation, Crow has been a partner in our financial audits for years, and we knew that they had recently acquired a Kentucky-based consulting firm. So we felt that that local presence would be ideal and valuable in this process. Next slide, please. So what is an IRP, an incident response plan? It's a document that guides our staff and our leadership as we respond to various types of information security incidents. Those are generally threats to data or information. They can include things like a device loss, hacking or system intrusions, threats from insider threats like employee or affiliate data leaks, viruses like malware, ransomware, or even impersonation attempts like social engineering. Our incident response plan at WKU was developed in 2017, and we did that in partnership with Dell SecureWorks. But because of leadership changes at WKU, it was largely filed away. So this exercise was the first external test and review of the plan since its initial development. Next slide, please. So a tabletop exercise, or a TTX, because we like to abbreviate everything in IT. But a TTX is a sort of a dress rehearsal for a response plan. So it involves the actual team members at WKU, and they step through the plan using fictitious security incidents as practice. To prepare for our TTX, we sent our plan to Crow along with some additional documentation, including our information security plan, which is available on our website, and our internal disaster recovery plan, so that Crow could put the incident response plan in context. We scheduled most of a day for the exercise. It included a 30-minute overview or introductory presentation about the plan and the process, 2 one-hour sessions, one for each of the mock incidents, which we call ploys, and then a 30-minute wrap-up and review period. The participants that we chose were included, and the team represented the areas of WKU that are referenced in the plan. Next slide, please. Here you'll note that people on the team included people from legal, IT, communications, and then several areas of strategy, operations, and finance, including HR, internal audit, purchasing, emergency management, and then we even had the EVP herself as a cabinet representative in the process. Next slide, please. We planned the tabletop exercise initially as an in-person exercise, and that's part of the reason why we selected a local firm. But as I mentioned, and it was ultimately conducted in Zoom in late April due to COVID-19. 3 professionals from Crow selected 2 of the ploys that you see here on the screen, including a mock ransomware incident and a mock insider threat or a public disclosure of WKU data. These ploys were unknown to the team in advance, and they were unveiled gradually as the incidents actually would be in real life. And the team would learn new information from Crow and respond to that real information in real time as the exercise progressed. Following the exercise, Crow put together a document of 3 major observations or categories of observations regarding our plan and the tabletop exercise itself. Next slide, please. Observation 1, or this category, relates to documentation of the plan itself. Crow's points noted that our plan was complete and that we had the necessary components of a good information incident response plan, but they also suggested several improvements. For example, they noted that we had not updated our plan since 2017, and that mainly referenced or referred to several process guides that were attached to the plan that guide our response to specific incident types like the ones I mentioned earlier, rather than the plan itself. And then with the next 2 points you see here, they wanted to make it clear that they felt that the experts in the room were acting more from their experience during the exercise than they were referencing the plan. And they felt that way because there were times when aspects of our approach in the room didn't line up with our documentation or weren't well documented in the plan itself. Ironically, I think that even though we are experienced and professionals and whatnot, I think it was more our inexperience with the testing process that caused this, and also the fact that this was our first run through of the plan as a group. Next slide, please. Observation 2 from Crow, this category relates to roles and responsibilities, which Crow noted that we didn't clearly or explicitly state as we began each ploy session what the roles and responsibilities of the various team members were. And they also felt that I was acting as the incident security or incident manager role. And then, of course, I didn't clearly state that during the session. I think clearly there were a few things that I think and the group thought were understood during the tabletop exercise that we should definitely clarify as a matter of best practice in future exercises. Next slide, please. Observation 3 related to the completion of essential steps in the plan or critical tasks. Crow noted that we did need to formally decide during the exercise when we were going to declare an incident based on the information that was presented. They also noted that we might consider reverse engineering some of the malicious activity, like in particular the ransomware situation. If we were to reverse engineer the ransomware, it might help us determine its potential impact on our environment and how to better contain it. They noted that we should perform a post-event analysis for each one of the exercises. And then they also gave us a tip from their experience, which is that a single checklist of steps rather than multiple process guides that we had for various types of incidents would help us with our response procedures. Next slide, please. And we agree definitely with all of the observations, and we communicated our response to those to the cabinet in June. And we have documented several improvements for future exercises. Those include the fact that we will be explicitly communicating and highlighting team member roles during each one of the deploys in the future. We are going to work off of a checklist as suggested. And the checklist will not only contain the steps that we need to complete and check off during the response process, but it will also allow us to assign each one of those tasks to an individual team member, which will help us include more people and have those team members lead that portion of the checklist during the exercise. I think the entire team felt like we didn't have enough time for ploy development in the process. And so my recommendation is that when we engage in this in the future, that we move to a 90-minute period for broader participation for the ploy development. And also, in addition to that 90 minutes, we add another 30 minutes on the end of each ploy for post-event analysis. That will essentially move each one of the ploy developments from 1 hour to 2 hours. which I think will give us a much better result. I think the entire team felt a little constrained by the time limits previously. And then the last base that I think we'll cover is that we will definitely make a formal incident declaration during each ploy. The way we're going to track these in the future is that we've got an annually recurring ticket in our service management system, and that will allow us to keep documentation about these suggested improvements for the exercises that we're going to conduct in the future, as well as adding in lessons learned for each one of the review periods that we conduct afterward. Next slide, please. We're also making several improvements to the plan itself. For example, I mentioned that we're eliminating the plan's process guides and developing a response checklist as Crow recommended. The entire team and Crow informally felt that the current plan was rather cumbersome. If you include the process guides, it's about 150 pages, which if you're trying to react in an incident, could be a little bit cumbersome to review. So the new version that's under development, we're eliminating those process guides, replacing those with a checklist. That cuts it down by at least half. And then we're also eliminating a lot of wordiness. And Crow pointed out that there were some redundancies of things like data classifications and system criticality between the IRP and the other documentation that we submitted. So they recommended leaving that out of the incident response plan and referring to those other documents, which we'll definitely do. Overall, that shorter length, we hope, just makes the process much more efficient and streamlined in the future. I've also created a SharePoint site that's available to team members. We're going to use that in the future for plan review and recommendations regarding the plan. And then we will also use our service management system to track the plan changes in the future. So we'll be keeping old versions and new versions each time there's an update, so that we can see all those changes over time. We're currently finalizing our updates, and we'll be presenting them to the cabinet before the end of the year in preparation for a 2021 exercise. And then in summary, I just wanted to say that I think we learned a lot from this process and this exercise, and I definitely wanted to thank the team for their participation, and also thank the Regents for their guidance in this process. I definitely look forward to future exercises that should help us improve our plan and our readiness for potential incidents. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. Is this something that you plan on doing annually from here on out?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. Greg, real quick, it's David Brinkley. I just, based on, and I'm saying this based on the data that we were provided as Regents, is the reason that WKU is, and again, this is based on what's written here, searching for a different firm to lead the next exercise, is that because you mostly disagreed with of the 9 observations? It says that you mostly disagreed. I'm going to say partially agree equals mostly disagree with the findings of Crow. Is that why you're looking for a different firm? So because you wouldn't have an apples to apples comparison if you switch firms after 1 year. I'm just curious as to what led that decision.
Well, I wouldn't say that I mostly disagree, David. I think basically the reason I said partially agree, and I realize how that sounds, is simply that there were some things that were noted by Crow in the observations that were inaccurate. Like the fact, I pointed out the fact that they said that our plan hadn't been updated since 2017. It's not entirely true, and that's the only reason I said partially agree on that point, because we had some updates that occurred in 2019, but they were generally correct, that the bulk of the plan hadn't been updated since 2017. I don't think that we necessarily want to pick a different vendor in the future, but what I was getting at with that point was that I think we could benefit from a variety or a diverse set of opinions on our plan. I think we've gotten Crow's opinion on our plan, and I think that even though we're undergoing significant changes to it, I think there might be benefit from changing vendors. I'm not totally resigned to that. I definitely would use Crow again. I just felt like in this case that we could benefit from that diversity of opinion.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jason, I've got a couple of questions. Susan, what is our insurance coverage in this area? Are we self-insured on our exposure, or do we have overlines to cover us if we have an incident with ransomware?
I can answer that if it's helpful. Basically, we do have an insurance policy. Our insurance policy is with Beasley. It's offered to us through Van Meter, and it does cover several incidents like ransomware.
Do you know our coverage limits?
I do. It's generally a $10 million policy. There's other limits that might take it up to 13 in certain circumstances, but generally that's the coverage.
Have you had any communications with other universities that have experienced a ransomware and the type of liability exposure they faced? Is that, what I'm asking, is that enough coverage?
That's the coverage that was recommended to us based on an assessment that Van Meter did when we got the policy. I haven't had conversations with very many universities about their coverage levels. People tend to keep that under cover because of the potential for people to take advantage of that. But I have had informal conversations with CIOs at other universities about particular incidents in their environment, and they definitely felt they were well covered by their insurance.
I would suggest to the committee that we ask Greg to come back to the committee with some pricing on additional coverage.
Okay.
Not necessarily recommend that we get more coverage, but if it's not that expensive, we might decide that it's a prudent thing to do. And then I'd ask the committee if, due to the significance of the risk, if somehow the board ought to calendar to make sure we get an annual review of the intrusion testing, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, definitely. I think intrusion testing, or penetration testing, as we sometimes call it, is a fairly sensitive exercise because it can expose information about your environment that you might not want to publicize. I think the best way to do that would probably be in a closed session or with direct meetings, something like that.
I understand. You could edit our needed privacy would be kept private, or you could just have a report back to the chairman of the finance and budget, or to the chair himself. I just think that we need to make sure that this exposure is always addressed.
Yes, definitely. You broke up a little bit in there, but I definitely picked up on what you were saying about the possibility of editing those results and reviewing those.
Greg, your plan was to.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Freddie. I raised my hand and Jason.
No, I'm finished. Thank you.
Sorry, Freddie. Greg, your plan was to do some kind of drill like this or practice annually, correct?
Yes.
So that you're aware of any potential issues you might have. So the idea is if you would do it annually, then there would be a report. Is that better that we get the report after you do the annual? And I think that may be what Freddie was maybe asking a little bit too.
Yeah, we can do that for sure. This exercise is a little bit different than what he was just referencing. There's multiple things that we do annually. In this case, like this presentation was regarding a tabletop exercise of the plan, the incident response plan. What Regent Higdon is also referring to is an annual penetration test of our systems, which is basically like a team of ethical hackers trying to break into our systems. And so both of those, we do both of those annually.
Greg, help me remember, when did we first acquire the insurance policy for this kind of liability? I thought I remembered having this conversation with Gordon Johnson when I arrived, but help refresh our memory, because this is relatively recent. Yes.
That's right. It was about 2017, so you definitely would have had that conversation with Gordon.
So we do have liability protection, at least for the past 3 years, we had not had previously.
Dr. Gaboni, I've noticed with our insurance policy, they're encouraging us to buy. They did it for a very, very long time. And then this last option we renewed in September, we weren't really given a choice. That this was something. So I think something that's become more relevant, that people need to have this kind of security, or at least a policy to protect them.
I think the points well taken though about checking on increasing the rates was once you have the policy in place, sometimes you double the coverage for little additional premium. So that certainly needs to be checked into. I agree.
All right. Anybody else have any discussion or questions? If not, thank you, Greg. And that Regent Chair Higdon, that concludes the Finance and Budget Committee agenda.
Thank you, Chair McKinney and the Finance and Budget Committee. Good news, great report. A lot of hard work by Susan and her team, and we're very thankful and complimentary of their efforts in these new normal times. So thank you again. Our next segment is Student Affairs. Chair Henson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Higdon. I just always say for the new regents, we've got the best committee. That we always know something positive, find out something positive about what students are doing at the university or something good happening. All these other things are great, but I still think we've got the best committee. So Ethan, on that note, I'm gonna roll it over to you. It's good to see you and hope you're doing well.
Thank you, Chair Henson. Thank you. Good morning to the board and President Gaboni. Thank you. I have an information to share with you today about scholarships, just what our scholarship portfolio from the institution level looks like for this next year. We've made some public announcements about that, but I wanted to give everybody just kind of a collective recap, just for information to the board, and let you know how that looks presently. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Hopefully I picked the right one. Can everybody see that?
No.
Okay, good. I'll try that again. Here we go. How's that look?
There.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity this morning to talk a little bit about scholarships rewards. You know, we talked about briefly in the financial committee about the growth of institution enrollment, and there's really two highlights that I'd bring to that conversation that kind of echo through scholarship. One was as we look at the growth overall from last fall to this fall's class, there's two things that really stand out. One, the growth over last year. You could see the growth over last year was in students whose GPA was at 3.0 and above. So we had a growth in the total number of students who are coming in above a 3.0. And we saw a lot of growth in development in actually the largest county of enrollment growth was Warren County, followed very closely by Jefferson County. But Warren County was the largest growth over last year in terms of students enrolling at the institution. And I'll come back to those because I think that those kind of are interesting comments in light of the choices that we've made strategically for scholarship growth and development. Let's see if I can advance the slide. The scholarship academic merit awards that we started last year. So this was actually from this last fall 2019. It was really a novel approach and a new approach to the way that scholarships are historically, merit awards are historically done at institutions of higher education. And that was specifically that we dropped off a college entrance exam qualifier, except for our very top award, in terms of how we provided access to merit scholarship for academic performance. And that did a couple of things. That streamlined the process, but it really focused on a couple of things that really, I think, that resonated with students this year. And that was that we are opening accessibility to the institution and providing opportunity to more students in academic merit and increasing the affordability of the institution. So we opened up this academic merit award to students at and above a 3.0. So when we talk about a growth and development and an expansion of enrollment at 3.0 and higher, GPA was where we saw the lift in the student enrollment. I think that we can correlate this very closely to the fact that we changed our academic merit award structure. There are some students who have strong academic backgrounds, but perhaps didn't have the background of access or preparation in terms of college entrance exams, or even the historical or the support from their families, in the sense that they were the first generation of students who were considering college entrance exams and were completely unprepared for the way that college entrance exams were a part of our historical educational culture. And they qualified for merit awards at WKU that perhaps they would never have qualified for at any other institution that they were considering. So we provided an open door for access to education with support for academic performance, and it really was very, very well received nationally, and it was I think a very important step that we made in terms of our institution as a choice. That's the original structure. We will repeat this going forward in terms of what our academic merit award structure looks like. We have continuing targeted awards that are part of what we have as well, that we have done in the past and will continue to do. These targeted awards from the Kentucky Governor's Office, instance of the Governor's Scholars, School for the Entrepreneurs, School of the Arts, and National Merit and Achievement Semifinalists and Rogers Scholars. We also have and will continue the Cornelius Martin Scholarship that we have for students who are underrepresented in our institution, and then the Gatton Academy graduates also will qualify for an award. We introduced some new ideas and adaptations to what we're doing with scholarships going forward into this year. So fall 21, we started a new programs, 3 really new scholarship programs, kind of adaptations, but also what I would say is some progressive and leading thoughts in terms of how an institution provides scholarships to students. The Hilltopper Guarantee is not a unique scholarship nationally. There are other institutions that have been providing commitment to students of low socioeconomic status, but this is an important part of what Western Kentucky is bringing to the Commonwealth, and is really a dedication to who we are as a member of this Commonwealth's higher education position for students in the state. So not only are we taking a leadership step in terms of making sure that we're providing this very generous, accessible opportunity, but we're also demonstrating our commitment to Kentucky first in terms of what we're doing. The Hilltopper Guarantee, of course, is a program for students who have any Pell eligibility, and Pell eligibility is the federal determinant on terms of where federal grant aid starts, and that's a sliding scale. It can go it starts in low 500s up to 6,000s in terms of where students can receive aid based upon their expected family contribution. It's a intricate and interesting formula for determination of how much a family should consider what a family could be considered to provide for their son or daughter's pursuit of higher education. But any qualification level that a student hits in terms of Pell eligibility and they're Kentucky resident, and they come into our institution with a 3.0 high school GPA, that the full tuition cost is going to be remunerated in terms of their collection of scholarships and aid that they're going to have, any of the last dollar scholarships are going to be absorbed by the institution. It's a really a wonderful promise to students who have considered higher education but felt an obstacle because of cost. And so it's a true commitment to the Commonwealth and to the potential growth of educating the population in the state of Kentucky. The Border State Scholarship is our second scholarship promotion and position for this year, and I'm really excited about this because as we look at, and this graphic really helps enhance this concept. If looking at a national stage in terms of where we look at enrollment by institutions, and this is just on a national level, that the predominance of students who enroll at an institution of higher education, on a national average, 54% of students enroll in an institution of higher education within 50 miles of their home. And upwards to about 72% of the total enrollment of an institution of higher education are coming to an institution that's within 100 miles of their home. So if you think about that location of Western Kentucky and Bowling Green, and you think about 50-mile concentric circle and then a 100-mile concentric circle, you can think about we've crossed the border into a couple of states at this point. And so our regional position, and this is really, you know, to play on the term of what we are as a regional institution of higher education, our region is more broadly defined than just the natural borders of the state of Kentucky. And there are students that are within our region who we can really provide optimal and desired educational experience. So we're redefining what the market for higher education can be in terms of a regional comprehensive institution. Our region is broader than just South Central Kentucky. We're not excluding Kentucky in any way. In fact, we doubled down on our commitment to Kentucky in our guarantee, but we're also saying that there are great populations of students just across the border in Tennessee, in Indiana, in Illinois, even Ohio, who there's great population centers of students who yet have not necessarily considered Western Kentucky because of just a price difference. We're eliminating that, and we're competing on brand and the value of education that we bring. And I think that we'll be a college of choice just across the border as a growing opportunity for a lot of students. I spoke to our director of admission, Jace Lux, yesterday, and he was telling me about a call he got from Indianapolis high school counselor who had to call to verify. We had sent them information about our Border State Scholarship, and he wanted to confirm that he wasn't misreading, that Indiana students could come to Western Kentucky University at a resident state rate for tuition. He couldn't believe his eyes, and so it was really an exciting component that we're changing the idea of what an institution of our size, our caliber, and our promotion of opportunity can be, and it's really exciting. And I think that we'll be leaders in terms of what we're doing going forward. The Border State Award Scholarship is, of course, a consideration for our 7 contiguous states that they're admitted to the institution and enrolled full-time, and that we have a continuation based on satisfactory academic performance. But the idea being that students who reside in our border states can attend WKU for an in-state tuition rate. Finally, the other opportunity that we have is a commitment to our alumni and those people who are part of the WKU Hilltopper family. And so the WKU Family Scholarship is a commitment to our alums, and we've expanded this tuition rate qualification for our new first-time freshmen whose parents or their step-parents or their grandparents have a degree or certificate from Western Kentucky University. And so if they're living anywhere else in the United States, outside of Kentucky, outside of the 7 contiguous border states, that they can enroll at WKU also at an in-state rate. And so we're going to say that the value of being a Western Kentucky University alum is the fact that your son or daughter can also have the opportunity to be a Hilltopper And we want to make sure that this is an opportunity to be in consideration for their choices in higher education as well, and that cost is not a prohibitive obstacle to them continuing the Hilltopper tradition. And so this is really nice. If you think about this trio of scholarships, it's a commitment to the state of Kentucky, it's a commitment to our region and opportunity, and it's a commitment to our alum who have been a part of our institution and what we can do for them and provide them with a continuation of great educational opportunity. We had this last couple of years what we call the tuition incentive program, and so we've revised those scholarships that we just talked about. We're adaptations on the tuition incentive scholarship, and we've redefined what we call the tuition incentive program to be this: that any non-resident, non-contiguous state student who is outside of our area, who has a high school GPA of 3.0 and qualifies for any of our scholarship awards from the institution, that they will be able to qualify for the tuition incentive program, which is a reduction of the out-of-state tuition rate. And so it's not an in-state rate, but it is definitely a reduction of a true out-of-state tuition rate. And that's an incentive to try to make sure that those students who are sought outside of our region, outside of our state, but who have demonstrated tremendous intellectual or talents and skills that we desire to bring to the Hill, that they have an opportunity to leverage the consideration and opportunity here. So in addition to the receiving scholarships, then they also can have a reduction to their out-of-state tuition rate. And so that's kind of a commitment back to the institution to say, please feel free, feel encouraged, and feel leveraged to go out and recruit students across the country who are students you desire to bring to your programs. This is across all disciplines. And so it can be, a music student of great talent that we want to bring to the campus. It could be a student who demonstrated scientific research and of scientific mindset that could be a great addition to our institution. So if we look at all sorts of scenarios where we would want to offer a scholarship because of a student that was a student of great interest to any of our programs and services at the institution, that we could help accentuate the affordability and the attractiveness of Western Kentucky University as an institution. And there's the specifics about the incentive program. Of course, we're talking about a full-time student and a recipient of a university scholarship. But if they meet those criteria, then we would provide them a discount on out-of-state tuition. That's the highlights of our scholarship platform and portfolio for this next year. Of course, there's other scholarships online that are unique to our programs, colleges, and foundation, but this is the general profile and prospectus of what we're providing for our students this next year for our recruitment and development of our new class.
Regents, if I could contextualize this for everyone in a way that I hope is simple to understand. When I first came here, there's a Mexican restaurant right across the tracks down the hill from the university. And you go into this neighborhood, it's a low income neighborhood, and you look up the hill and there's this shining university. And I want every young person in that community, no matter their family's economic condition, to know if they get a 3.0 in high school, that they can come to WKU tuition free. We want to be that neighborhood's university. And we want every one of those young people to know that we're possible in their future. The same thing's true for our region. We're going to erase that invisible line between Kentucky and Tennessee and all those other states to say we're going to lift the economy and we're going to be accessible to every person from the region in a way that grows the possible number of students that we can recruit in a way that is good not just for the university, good for Bowling Green as we attract talent and retain it here after they graduate. And then the last part is, if you're a legacy student, if one of your family members graduated from WKU, we want to make it easy for you to come home to the Hill. And so that's how we're talking about this publicly, in a way that transforms who we are, our market, and what we aspire to be as an institution.
Thank you, Dr. Caboni. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Ethan? Garrett?
I don't really have a question, but I would just like to echo what President Caboni has said. And it's because of those words, I'm very proud to be a Hilltopper, but also very proud of this scholarship expansion. You know, I come from a small town of 400 people, and I'm very blessed to have a family that has supported me through college, but also encouraged me to get a degree. And I know there are many individuals just in the area I'm from that don't have that same kind of backing, but are so smart. And something like this is going to really help them to be able to obtain that four-year degree. And I really hope that we consider this when it comes up to have a vote on it. I'm very, very proud of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. See, I told you all we had the best community. I mean, it's always something positive. Yes, Tina?
I have a question about how these new scholarships are publicized, especially to the out-of-state students that would be eligible. I mean, that may be a long question and more involved than you want to get into, but just generally.
Ethan, you want to answer that?
That's a great question. So it's a combination of a couple of things. It's direct communication in terms of, hard mail, email to students. It's conversations with high school counselors. We're sending them communication and engaging them in conversations about these scholarship developments. And it's also in our online presence and social media / digital advertising. And so you'll see this repeated across a variety of modalities and delivery devices in terms of how we're trying to get this message out. Saturating the idea of what this is across prospective students, families, but also across high school counselors is our number one priority, to try to make sure that this message is known and that WKU rises up in terms of a consideration for potential opportunity for higher education.
Now, Ethan, that guidance counselor in Indiana, did they get a flyer or an email that kind of going on along with what Jan asked?
Yes.
Did they get something? Okay, so they got some communication from Western, and
Yes.
Was it hard mail or was it email or?
Yes. Yeah. It was direct mail collateral. Yes.
Okay, good.
Chair Henson,
Yes, sir.
I would like to brag on our president for his out-of-the-box innovation and pursuit of this scholarship program and the team that he has assembled for student recruitment. It's remarkable, innovative. And it's going to separate us from the rest of the universities in our state. Thank you, President Caboni.
Ditto, Chair Higdon. Does anybody else have? Yes, Klaus.
I'm very excited about these new scholarships. I think this is a really step in the right direction. But my question is, how much financial risk are we taking here? So could you, for example, give us numbers? Suppose we take this fall's class, okay, and we had this program in place. How much would we lose in tuition revenue? And then, we're hoping to grow our student body. And so what is necessary for us to come out ahead?
Ethan, you want me to take this one?
I'm happy to, but please go ahead.
Okay, well, because I'm in the room. I think the numbers are this. We talked last year about how much is break even. I want to remind everyone that we're thinking about a net tuition revenue perspective, not just headcount anymore. And so the goal of this is to grow the revenue we have available to us, both through that first year class, but also through retention as you shape the class and have more students with above a 3.0 who will persist. For us to break even, we need 30 more in-state students, 130 out-of-state. Now, I've challenged the admissions group. What's the number, Ethan?
You'd like to see 3,500 new freshmen, sir?
That's next year. We got to get to 4,000 the year after that, but we'll work on 3,500 for fall for fall 21. So
those are quite modest numbers, and
very much so.
They must be achievable.
You remember the conversation we had last year was around if we needed about 100, and we got 450. We need about another 130. I think we can get 450.
These numbers good, yeah. All right, does anyone have any more questions? Ethan, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair Henson.
And Chair Higdon, we're finished with our Student Affairs Committee report.
Thank you, Chair Henson. We next turn to our last committee meeting, the Executive Committee. We have 2 action items. I don't know who's presenting these. President Cavoni, are you presenting the water district easement?
Jennifer Tuga's on the line.
Yes, sir.
There you are.
Yes. Wait, it's down. There you go, 38 by the looks of it. Yeah, there we go. Thank you for your time this morning. This is a piece that Warren County Water District approached us back in the summer. And they have a sewage substation that is located on Elrod Road adjacent to the ag farm property that is nearing end of life, and that they would like to upgrade and make that upgrade that's kind of in context of the growth that we're seeing in southern Warren County. They're requesting an easement on the ag farm property that's approximately 50 foot by 50 foot area that's along the edge of the ag farm along Elrod Road. And as part of that easement, the Warren County Water District would be responsible for securing the lift station site, replacing the cattle fencing that's currently there, and maintaining the grounds between the 2 fences. All of the ag farm stakeholders have met with the Warren County Water District on site and support this recommendation. If you proceed to the next slide, and it just shows a map of the area that that's in question. So next slide, please. So you can see the old lift station, the little elbow in Elrod Road there, the existing ag farm fence row in red, the red dashed line. The green dashed line would be the enclosed easement area with the proposed new lift station. The additional road drawings that you see there are part of what KYTC has put together as a previous study with ongoing discussions about a potential interchange with the Natural Parkway. So that is not something that is in the immediate future, but it is something that, as they're placing this this proposed lift station, they're cognizant of what that potential impact would be. And so that's the information item, and I'll be happy to take any questions. The action item is to approve the requested easement.
Let me start with a question. What is the visual above ground apparatus and station look like, and is it aesthetically pleasing?
Yeah, everything will be enclosed behind a green chain link fence that has the your visual screen. There'll be a visual screen around the substation itself.
Second question, Region Milliken, do you have any history in this area? What would
I'm
be?
sorry, I do not.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee or other regions?
Does this enhance our property? And I'm not even sure what's on that property, but does it?
What was the question?
Does it improve our worth of our property? Does it enhance it? Does it give better service to whatever we have on that property?
It has the potential to do that, because the new lift station itself would help support any improvements that we would do to the farm itself. The property is currently used as a cattle grazing area. So it's, like I said, we had Dean Arbuncle, we had Paul Woosley, other members of agriculture group meet on campus, on site to review the location, and they were supportive of this request.
There was something about this property a few years ago that somebody wanted it for something, I can't remember what, but it was made clear that that property is valuable. And I guess if you look at Bowling Green, what's going on in Bowling Green, any property around here is valuable. So giving up even just 50 by 50, I'd like to think that in some way it is enhancing the rest of the property.
I think what it would do is it provides some infrastructure to allow for future development. You know, what they're doing as they're replacing this lift station is replacing with something with a larger capacity.
Regent Bell, that was a medical office group that was going to put a clinic or center out on the farm. Is that a good recollection?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have questions?
I would just ask, what's the length of time on the easement?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'd have to go back to my documents to look at that. If you give me one moment. We have had the draft agreement reviewed by legal and all parties.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Brian Russell. Can I step in here, please?
Sure, please.
Like to address the board. The easement would basically be as long as the infrastructure that supports that whole county area is in place. So I'd make the assumption that the easement is there forever unless it's totally removed. And that'd be the lift station. That lift station is for all the sewer and sanitation for that whole area and could possibly pick up future farm use. It is located at a real hard curve. It's not anywhere close to Bennett Lane, which faces the 6880 roadway or Nashville Road out front. And it's really located more on the back of the farm. But if any other questions.
Thank you, Brian.
Any other questions from Regents?
I move that we grant the easement as presented.
I second.
Motion by Regent Bell, second by Regent Henson. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Next item is an honorary naming request. Amanda, are you presenting that?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you, Chair Higdon. I'm pleased today to present an honorary naming request for the Julie and Gary Ransdell Living and Learning Community at LifeWorks at WKU. LifeWorks at WKU provides counseling, employment training, life skills training, and education to individuals diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder to advance opportunities for independence and affordable housing. The residential buildings for LifeWorks were located at 1328 Adams Street and were completed through renovation of existing apartment buildings. Renovations to the housing complex were completed this past spring, And the program launched with 6 residents this fall. At capacity, the program will have 26 participants. Dr. Gary Ransdell served as the 9th president of Western Kentucky University from September 12, 1997 until his retirement on June 30, 2017. During his tenure, he and the Board of Regents led the campus through a dramatic transformation from a university of regional importance to one of leading American university with international reach. Dr. Ransdell received his BA in Mass Communication from WKU in 1973, an MPA in 1974, and his Doctorate of Education from Indiana University in 1978. Julie Ransdell served as our First Lady and spent 20 years working both behind the scenes and on the front lines of leadership along with her husband. Julie earned her BS in Elementary Education from WKU in 1975. And prior to the Ransdell's return in 1997, she served in several school systems as a classroom teacher. This honorific naming is recommended in recognition of Dr. Gary and Julie Ransdell's leadership and dedication to the LifeWorks program and its inception at WKU. This was also made at the request of a confidential leadership donor to the program. LifeWorks at WKU will cover all the costs of the signage that will be installed on the property.
Thank you, Amanda. Any comments or questions from a committee member or other regions?
Freddie, I'd just like to say I toured the LifeWorks building the last time I was in Bowling Green. David Brinkley and I toured, and it is unbelievable what they have done to that whole corner and the programs they're going to offer and services to adults after they've had their student experience here at WKU that are on the autism spectrum. It was just unbelievable. Actually, I said to David, I think that it was nicer than any apartment I rented after leaving Western Kentucky University. These things were lovely and nice. And Gary Watkins did a fabulous job on the renovation. But this is an area that we're not seeing in the rest of the state of Kentucky. And for us to have a program like this really sets us apart and allows the students to become adults by working with them after they graduate in WKU. But if you ever get a chance to go tour these buildings and what they've done over there and the apartments and stuff, it's quite impressive.
Again, for the benefit of our new regents, if memory serves me correctly, I think the money for this has come from Mr. Gatton. And so I would wonder whether there's been any communication there, and he, I would imagine, would think favorably of this, but I am curious.
Yes, he is well aware of the progress and what is happening with the LifeWorks facility.
Right.
I'd like to make a motion to, how do I officially do this? Y'all gotta help me, I can't remember. Officially move that we approval, okay, we officially, whatever, you all help me. All right, here's how we say it. Move for approval of honorary naming request for Julie and Gary Ransdell Living and Learning Community at LifeWorks at WKU.
I'll second.
Thank you.
We have a motion by Regent Henson, a second by Regent Bale. Any further discussion or comments?
Yeah, I just have a question. So I have a long history at WKU, so I was here when Gary Ransdell came initially. And what I very clearly remember is that Gary Ransdell said that a naming opportunity ought to be backed up by a significant gift. And so he said that at the response, because what we did do, we named a dormitory after the prior president. And so, and then we did name a building the Gary Ransdell Hall on campus. And so my question is there a significant gift behind this?
Yes, at the request of a donor, the naming opportunity is made in their honor at the request of that lead donor to the facility.
Any other questions or comments? Regent Ernst, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have a motion and a second. Call the vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. That concludes the executive committee portion of our agenda. We next move to an executive session matter. Julia McDonald, do we need to coordinate a break here, or can we easily transition into closed session?
We need to go ahead and have a motion and we can break real quick.
Chair
Okay.
Higdon.
Yes, Regent Brinkley.
I move that the board go into closed section as provided in KRS 61.810, Section 1, for the following discussion. Discussion of proposed or pending litigation against or on behalf of the university.
We have a motion for a closed session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Regent Bale. Question? All those in favor, aye. Opposed, like sign. We will now proceed